The president is the chief executive officer of this corporation called the United States of America.
Can you handle the truth? Welcome to the Jordan Maxwell Show.
Good evening, folks. This is Jordan Maxwell. I've been away for a little bit, been under the gun, haven't been well, and other things happening. I just haven't been able to get back to my show that I really love doing. And so here I am. I'm still here, and I'm back on the show again. So I want to thank Danny and American Freedom Radio for giving me an opportunity to be on the show. It's been a long ride for me. For many years, I've been doing radio and been trying to awaken people to the world that we live in and what's going on. But it seems as though there has been some dent made, and that people are beginning to wake up. And I don't know where it's going to go. I have no idea what's going to happen with the new president. Of course, my feeling is, my God, anything's better than the Marxist-Leninist Soviet communist bullshit that we've had to put up with. And then before that, with Obama and the SS and the Gestapo, and oh my God, America's such a horrible, horrible scenario. Most people have no idea about where all this stuff has come from, what it is now, and where it's going. We could talk about that later on in other shows. But I'm very interested originally and always. I don't care about the government. I feel like what's his name? Who said I don't have a dog in this race? George Carlin. And I feel the same way. I don't have anything in this world, so I'm not concerned about it. I'm only trying to awaken my fellow man to what's going on. But my first love has always been theology and religion. That's really what I have dedicated my life to. And I realized a long time ago that the three major religions of the world, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, are not the answer. There is an important story, and let me say this going out the gate, that there is an important story, a very fascinating and powerful story in the New Testament, in the story of Jesus in the New Testament. It's encoded. And as long as you're listening to the blabbermouth preachers and all the money-grubbing multimillionaires with their diamond rings and Rolex watches and flying around $25 million jets, they don't have anything for anybody. That's why it's a sick and decaying system called the church. The church is a dying, decaying, smelly operation which is based on money, exploitation, stupidity, and ignorance. However, having said that, I know, because I have studied it for many years, that there is a incredibly fascinating encoded, I use that term, encoded or metaphor story in the New Testament. There's also some very interesting stuff in the Old Testament, as long as you know that the Old Testament was written by men, not God. But there is a lot of very interesting and intriguing material about the world and about mankind hidden, especially in the book of Genesis. So I'm not putting the Bible down at all. I'm just saying it's not written by God, it's written by men. But having said that, again, I would say that the New Testament is a very powerful encoded message. And you hear a lot today about Bible codes. Well, there's a code in the Bible. There's many Bible codes. Rabbis will tell you there's at least 7 codes in the Old Testament, not the King James Old Testament, but in the original Old Testament language. There's about 7 different codes. I'm I have been told. And I've had it demonstrated to me, 3 or 4 of those codes. But in the New Testament, again, it is a very powerful story, and I have decided I've got so much material on that subject, and I've talked about it for so many years and never been able to put it out because I've always been under the gun, and I've never been able to sit down and actually put a video or a show together explaining what I'm seeing, explaining what I have seen in the New Testament. But I'm doing that now. I'm working on that, coming up with a new video, and it's going to be a multi-part series. It's not going to be just one video. It's going to require maybe 2 or 3 videos in the series to talk about the New Testament metaphors, all the symbolic stuff that's been hidden for years that people walk right past and didn't even see it. So that's something I'm working on, something I've been looking at for many, many years. And I came across many years ago the subject of Gnosticism. And I began listening to one of the world's foremost Gnostic teachers, Dr. Stephan Haller, in Glendale. And he used to have a church here in Los Angeles and Hollywood. He still does have the church, but now it's I think it's in Glendale or Eagle Rock in Los Angeles, Dr. Stephan Haller. And he's a Gnostic minister. And beginning to listen to him many years ago, I was fascinated with the wisdom and the knowledge of religion and the occult sciences and all of the ancient teachings of the world that the Gnostics were aware of that we today aren't. And so I know that Gnosticism is something very important to understand. The word Gnostic simply means in the Greek language to know. And that's in opposition to something which is referred to in Christianity as a believer. So in Christianity, if you go to a new church and they are aware that you are a Christian, they will ask you, oh, how long have you been a believer? And there's all kinds of books written for Christians using the term believer, the believer's house of faith and the believer's book and the this and that believer. And so Christians are referred to as believers. That should tell you something. That's a tip-off. Because when Christians are referred to as believers, it implies they don't know, they believe. And I've said it so many times in the past that governments are not interested in believing something. Governments tap your phones, they tap your life, they tap you electronically. They spy on people. We have agencies called the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation. They investigate to see what the real truth is. You have something called the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency. And so governments around the world are not interested in what you believe, what you think. They don't care about that. Governments want to know for sure what you're doing. So they have intelligence agencies and research societies and eavesdrop on people to see what they're really talking about. So the point being that there's a world of difference between being a Gnostic, which in Greek means to know, as opposed to a Christian who is a believer. So one of my dearest friends in this world that would go back a long time ago as friends is an expert on the Gnostic tradition, the Gnostic teachings, etc. And I want to talk with him a little bit about that tonight, along with some other things that we want to talk about. So my guest tonight is a dear friend, Paul Tice. That's Tice, Paul Tice, in San Diego. His bookstore is called thebooktree.com. We'll talk with him and find out exactly how to find his website, because he has a massive printing operation with books on all kinds of fascinating subjects that he and I have loved for years. We used to go to old bookstores looking for all the old out-of-print books. And this is basically what Paul has done. His company, again, in San Diego is called thebooktree.com. And what Paul has done is taken so many of the old out-of-print reference works on religions and cults and secret societies and religions and all kinds of fascinating ancient history of aliens and UFOs and all that kind of thing, and has a massive printing operation, publishing in San Diego. So I wanted to have Paul on tonight because his store and his subjects are just fascinating to me, and you need to know about it and go on his website. So let me ask and see if my friend Paul is on with me. Are you there, Paul?
Yeah, we are here.
Okay, good. I tell everybody first, because you know what, I'm listening to other people's shows. I never get a chance to hear where I can contact the people. You know, they get right into the interview and don't tell you right up front where to contact the person if you like him. So tell everybody about your business and your company and how to get a hold of you. And people going to your website will see with their own eyes the magnificent array of all kinds of fascinating ancient books on religions and cults and secret societies. And it's amazing what you've been able to put together and reprint. So tell everybody about your website and a little about yourself.
Okay. Well, yeah, the book tree's been around for, 25 years or so.
Really? Really that long?
Let's see.
Yeah, it's at least that long, yeah, because I was there at the beginning. I'm just amazed that so much time has passed.
Yeah, it's like in the late 80s, I think, we published our very first booklet, which was your manuscript.
That's right. I sure remember that.
Yep, that was the very first thing, and it's been a good 25 years since then. But yeah, we're at thebooktree.com, but it's kind of hard to order anything on there. We have a free catalog that we give to anybody in the world that asks for it, and it's just it's got everything that we've sell and everything. Also, you can go actually onto the homepage of the book tree and download our catalog off of there. And at the same time, if you were to call our 800 number and get the free catalog, we've got an update sheet that it's not available on the website, but we've got a lot of new books that are pretty interesting too. So a lot of people are calling up and getting the free catalog sent to them. And I know that's old school. A lot of people like the electronic stuff today, but we like the actual holding paper in our hands kind of deal. I mean, that's just kind of what we've been doing all this time. And the electronic stuff is, I think it's good to have electronic readers when you travel, but I think there's still something to be said about actually having a paper book in your hand.
Well, look at Paul. I'm of the old school. I think there's a mystery, a mystique about having the old books, all the old books that you find in old bookstores, and then to find that they've been reprinted and continuing to make them available to new people, new young people today who are looking for the strange and fascinating wisdom and knowledge of the ancient world. There's something about having all those old books in my library that, I don't care. Like you said, the electronic media is great, but there's something to be said for having the old books in your library yourself. There's a whole mystique about that. So,
well,
you and I know all about that.
Oh yeah, yeah. In fact, they're dumbing us down with all this electronic stuff. I mean, in Europe, there's probably a few hundred used bookstores in and around Paris, and in Germany, where they invented the printing press. All through Europe, physical books are much more popular than they are today because there's a vested interest in all the electronic gadgets over here and the companies that want your money and this and that. But they're really dumbing us down. There's been a couple of major university studies that have been done which show that you retain far more information if you read from a physical book than from an electronic device. Across the board, the students got better grades and everything, and I actually wrote a book called This is a Book, Why Real Books Are Better. So that's a lot of research went into that, and actual physical books are different from, say, like a lot of the movie rental places are out of business now because you can just download a movie. A lot of the music stores are out of business because you can download the music, and you get the same thing when you download these things. But with a book, there's still a chance for books in bookstores because you actually have something three-dimensional in your hand. And I say, we live in a three-dimensional world. Let's act that way, because a lot of people come into my bookstore and they have these young children. And when they give them a two-dimensional sort of a device type thing where you can't reach in and grab anything, you got to press buttons, there's something missing in the tactile sense for not only children but for grown-up people as well. So there's a whole bunch of, I could go on and on about this, but I know we've got other things to talk about. But
well, I've heard that I heard a German scientist speaking quite a long time ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, talking about the audio and music that we listen to, and the difference between digital and the analog or something like that. But he said digital music is hurting the brain, the human mind. It's not doing what you think it is. It sounds good, but the way the brain receives the messages and translate the music for us, digital is really hurting us. Digital is not good to listen to, period. Well, that's what television is today, and that's what the news is. And like you said, everything else is digital, including your phone. But digital is really not good for the human mind, for the way that we process knowledge in our brain. Digital is bad. But
and so when you get the digital form of a book, you're experiencing that kind of stuff. And so,
that's right.
So I say, call our 800 number, ask for our free physical catalog. We'll send it free to you any place in the world, and you'll actually be able to hold it in your hands. So it's 1-800-700-TREE, 1-800-700-8733. 24 hours a day, you'll probably get a message center thing, but just say, hey, I want your free catalog. Send it to me. Give us your address. We'll zip one on out to you, and we can go from there. Because,
well, I'll tell you what. If you walk through your bookstore and see all the books that you have reprinted, all these old books that we've found in libraries and university libraries and old bookstores over the years of out-of-print, major, great stuff from the 1800s, incredible knowledge about the world we live in, the secret societies and religions and cults, and how all of these strange, dark, black magic works. All of this stuff is in old books, in old bookstores, and people who deal with old books, they know the value.
Well, here's the thing. Volumes. Yeah, because when these old books were published, I mean, there was a huge book business going on around the turn of the last century, around late 1800s up to about 1920 or 30 when the stock market crashed. It was before radio for the most part, before television. So the media, the way that we learned about things was through books. So there were much longer attention spans back then. The research was done in a much better way, in a much more focused way, and people just couldn't wait for the next book to come out. For instance, the biggest celebrities of the time were those who were authors. Mark Twain and different people like that. They were like the rock stars of the time, because that was the way that we really did it back then. And so as radio has come along, and with the jingles and with TV, with a 60-second commercial with 70 or 80 different edits or something sometimes, I mean, we've really had our attention spans zapped, whereby you go and find these old books, and you find that the research there, the information there is unparalleled today. And
of course.
it's been watered down. A lot of people will, say, well, we need to come up with new versions of this because, we live in this modern world now, but a lot of the stuff gets filtered away that is of real amazing value. I mean, you look at the stuff that Manly Hall wrote in
God, yes. Oh, yeah. All that stuff. You go into these old bookstores, mom and pop bookstores, and you find some old book in the back of the building, and it's written in the 1800s, and it's absolutely priceless information. Documents and all kinds of incredible knowledge about religions, where the religions have come from, what the governments are all about, where they come from, and all the concepts and ideas. It's just an amazing array of ancient knowledge going back into the ancient world, into the 1,000 years ago. But people today are watching football and never realizing how much really brilliant knowledge is being missed.
Well, I was in the
time.
Yeah, I was in the TV business and helping people to watch football or all kinds of different cartoons.
You were in television,
and stuff.
Yeah.
And then I realized at some point that it wasn't making me feel well for some reason. I just kept not feeling well doing it, and I'd take breaks from the job, and I was basically told by doctors, you need to do something different. And I realized that my path in life was not supposed to be in the TV world, offering and helping people to consume bubble gum for the brain, which you see on a lot of times on TV. It's just not anything substantial that you can, swallow and get nutrients. It's bubble gum for the brain, a lot of this TV stuff. And then because you and a good friend of ours, Jack Barringer, a couple of guys who I met that were, about 20 years my senior, that had read all these things and were turning me on to stuff that was just amazing. It just opened my mind. So I realized that I needed to do something different, and I started the Book Tree back then. And it was basically inspired by you and this other friend of ours, Jack Barringer, who, by the way, passed away last week. And
I know, and I heard, and he was a wonderful man, brilliant guy.
Absolutely brilliant human being, a professor of critical thinking and English, and
he was sensational friend.
Yeah, and so I owe a debt of gratitude to you, and I'd like to do a little tribute to him at some point during the show, because he was a revolutionary teacher at his college, and they let him get away with a lot of stuff, but it turned out he was teaching a lot of, in his critical thinking classes, a lot of stuff that we study and that, basically that we talk about and study, and he was allowed to bring that into his classrooms and teach it, which was amazing. But
it was amazing, because young people are so bored today. They're looking for entertainment, roller coasters, and surfing, and doing something, something to feel alive. And I hear it from the young people and from people generally that they're bored, they're tired, they're bored. There's nothing interesting in here, and there are even people committing suicide because they don't see anything of any value in the human world any longer. Nothing's there. And then I think, well, if you only knew how much is really there that you've never been told. You've never been told.
Yeah, the best information is still found in physical books. It's not on the internet. It's not on videos or a lot of this stuff. I mean, some people are starting to break through and making this stuff available on the net, and that's pretty good. But at the same time, if you know where to look to find the information that is really amazing stuff, that's what we're trying to preserve here and still make available. And that was what, Jack was doing in his classroom, and that's what you do in your presentations. I mean, this stuff, it really shouldn't be lost. And, all of these different companies and all these people in today's modern world trying to make a fast buck, it's bypassing the attention span that's needed to digest this information and get the true value out of it, because this everything moves in such a fast-paced way today because of technology.
And I just got off the show and talking about how people today in our world, and especially in America and in North America, but it's true all over the world, people do not have the power to do anything. We don't have political power, social power to change anything, to modify anything. We don't have the power to do anything. We're left to the political leaders, and whatever they do, we have to go along with it. Why? Because we don't have the power to do anything.
Well, that's why people voted for Trump, I think. We were blindsided because a lot of people didn't realize how upset the mainstream was and how much more they just really didn't want to take. I'm not saying he's the perfect choice.
I understand.
There's an ancient proverb. The only thing I'm going to say about Trump is there's an ancient proverb that says, coming events cast their shadow before them. That's all I'm going to say about Trump.
Yep, and that's true. And there's another old saying I heard many years ago, that when a little man makes long shadows, the sun is setting.
Yeah.
And so it's telling us something about Western civilization. Western civilization is crumbling before your eyes, and people are now very much so like cattle, and the ranchers who think they own the human race, they are stampeding the herd. You know, they stampede us into a war, and then they stampede us into this, and then they shout and shoot some guns off, and then it scares the herd, and we all run this way, and then we all run that way, and one day we're Democrats, and the next day we're Republican. And so the human race is like cattle that's being rustled out, you know, on the prairie, and they got horses that are scaring the cattle. And so all of this is based on the fact that we as humans have lost our humanity. We've lost the ability to think and question and perceive what propaganda is happening to us. And
well,
one other thing I would say about propaganda. I like that quote that says, propaganda does not deceive you. Propaganda helps you to deceive yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So we suck in this propaganda, we believe it, and then it affects the way we view it, affects the way we live. It wasn't the propaganda that did it. You bought into it yourself, you know.
Well, you know, they say that human beings are primarily emotional beings rather than logical. So if you can prey on people's emotions and get them so that they don't think, which is relatively easy if you're in power, then you can take control of the situation pretty easily by preying on people's fears and this and that. But here's the answer, though. We need to understand where we really came from and who we really are. And when we go back into all these old books and we go back and we study the ancient history and the very first forms of writing, and all of the mythologies and all of the stories,
ancient texts, all the ancient texts of the world.
If you study all of those and you start piecing them together, then we can get an understanding of where we really came from and who we are. And then all of this running back and forth and confusion and being herded together, a lot of that stuff could go away if we could simply gain an understanding of who we really are and where we came from. And that is it's a good possibility if you know where to look. That's what I'm saying.
That's exactly right, and that's the kind of stuff that you and I have loved for years, but that you have been gathering over the years and republishing those kind of research books, the type of stuff that Zecharia Sitchin, and I know that you traveled around the world with Zecharia Sitchin and knew all of the some of the other great writers was like who? Neil Freer, was it?
Neil Freer, yeah, we just lost him about 6 months ago, and Zecharia Sitchin would never write an introduction to or promote any other people until Neil Freer came along, because what Freer did was he came along and said, okay, look at Zecharia Sitchin's work. This guy figured something out about our true origins, and because Sitchin knew the ancient Sumerian language. He was one of less than 200 people in the world who could read it, but he wasn't tied in with any
universities or whatever.
Yeah, so that then he couldn't be ridiculed or anything like that. He just told it like it was, to the best of his ability. And Freer said, okay, Sitchin has figured out something amazing, and it all adds up pretty well. But still, that was so long ago. What does that mean for us today? Freer was actually a philosopher, and he was so incredibly brilliant, and he put all of Sitchin's work into a modern context, sent the manuscript to Sitchin, and Sitchin said, whoa, now we know what to do with all this information that I've gathered from the past. Now you're telling us, okay, what now? So Freer was just somebody that really needs to be listened to, because we can now have a framework for today about what it all means. And so that's
because
why,
so many people who are reading Zecharia Sitchin, and I hear it all the time, it's such a deep subject about how we humans evolved and mutated over the centuries and over thousands of years, and the ancient peoples and the ancient texts from the Hindus and the Sumerians and the ancient texts of the world. And so many people are just, we're just inundated with all of this. We don't know what to make of it. But like you said, Neil Freer did a street version for us and laid it down so that it's very easy to understand, where Zecharia Sitchin was, where his information was so important. So, and like I said, Neil Freer wasn't the only one. You've got so many great authors and great stuff in your bookstore. I'm just amazed how much you've been able to, to amass there. And give the people your address and everything again, where they can go, because it's really very important to know and to get the catalog. So tell people where to get it again.
well, you can just call us toll free at 1-800-700-8733. Easy way to remember it is 1-800-700-TREE. Or you could just go to the website, thebooktree.com, and drop us an email through there and just say, hey, send me your catalog and stuff. And ordering off the website is there's kind of a glitch on there right now, so we're in the process of trying to get all that handled. But and I apologize for that. But the great thing
that's the technical world we live in.
Yeah. So, but we do have a number of contemporary authors. Besides reprinting a lot of this older stuff, those in today's world who could put the same kind of context that Neil Freer has done, and just to help wake people up. Mm-hmm. That's who we've also dealt with. People like you, people like Neil Freer, like Jack Barringer. There's just a number of contemporary people that we've worked with in the past, and
well, it's quite a story, because when you look at regular bookstores today, the ordinary run-of-the-mill bookstores today, the big corporation bookstores, as opposed to your operation, there is no comparison. Comparing your literature and your subject matters and the books that you've got, as opposed to what you get in the regular bookstores, is comparing the noonday sun to the faint glow of a firefly.
Yeah,
There's
we've
no
got
comparison, boy.
Yeah, if you're ever in San Diego, if you live in San Diego, come on into our bookstore, because this
Absolutely.
place, we've got so much stuff here, we don't know where to put it all, because there's not many of us left. But when people come in here, and they go crazy, because
oh yeah, I mean, all the great stuff, all the old books that's been reprinted, they're brand new, but they're going back to the 1800s, the 1900s, all kinds of strange, interesting subjects like magic and how the dark side the religions of the world, where they've come from. I mean, it's a fascinating stuff you have.
Yeah, people from LA, since the Bodhi tree closed up there. I mean, people from LA come down here, and anytime they're down in the area, they definitely make sure to stop in. We're small, but we've got, we choose our subjects very carefully, and anything that's kind of hasn't sold for a while and isn't really the kind of stuff that can help people wake up goes out into our dollar section. So we got a good dollar deal and free area as well. You can find some good stuff even for $1 here. So,
yeah.
But anyway, we're at the Book Tree is at 3316 Adams Avenue in San Diego, and we're here noon to 7 Tuesday through Saturday. So, I mean, there's not many bookstores left. So, if you like books and you're ever in San Diego, especially this kind of stuff, swing by, snag some.
Yeah. And what was the address again?
3316 Adams Avenue.
Okay, and it's thebooktree.com.
Yeah, I really appreciate you giving me the time to just plug things a little bit, because a lot of people, they don't know where they can find this information anymore. If you go online, you got to know what you're looking for. But if you go into a bookstore like this, you can find stuff, you can discover stuff that is just like, whoa, wait a minute, And so it's much different experience from going online, and I feel sorry for younger people who are just using an electronic device, because, I mean, you can't really investigate and discover a lot of stuff when you're limited to just a little pocket thing that,
Of course. And see, and the reason why I'm so adamant about promoting your bookstore is because I am fascinated with wisdom and knowledge and understanding all my life. And I know the value of finding some old golden stuff, that's been lost or nobody even knows. Like when you go to UCLA or County USC or San Diego University, and you go down in what they call the stacks. Mm-hmm. You go down into the old book, all the thousands and thousands of old books that are in the reference sections of universities, and you start going through and you find extraordinary, really fascinating stuff on secret societies and cults and symbols and
That's how you did your research. I mean, that's what made you a preeminent researcher of basically you're probably the foremost expert on ancient religions and modern conspiracies, because you went to these places and dug out all this stuff that nobody else knew was even there. And then now you've got all these other people who have been sort of regurgitating all this amazing research. And a lot of people don't understand that you're the grandfather of all this kind of information for the most part. I mean, other people have put in a few other pieces of the puzzle, but a large portion of the puzzle has been put together by you, and a lot of credit has never been given. But I know what you've done, and what you're saying right now, and these resources and going into these. I mean, we would go into there was this one seminary in Pasadena where we were let in basically the back door, and we would just photocopy all these volumes of stuff that no one else had access to. I mean, if you really want the information and you know where to look, there is a ton of good stuff out there that would otherwise never see the light of day.
You're right. We used to go to these big seminary libraries and go downstairs, and they just got thousands of old volumes on religions and cults and ideologies and fascinating books with incredibly important pictures, diagrams of where religions have come from, where the concepts and ideas and belief systems originated, and all the documentation of all of this stuff. And you and I would, could spend hours just mulling through tons of incredible books.
Yeah, 5 cents a page at the copy machines, That's what it was. I've got bound stuff that you will never see anywhere else. That is bound in my personal library. That came from these stacks that, these books were never really for sale except maybe to universities, and that's how we got our hands on them. But the information is mind-blowing.
Oh, God, yes. Oh, heavens, yes.
So that's the kind of... That's the kind of research material that you used to bring together this kind of information to the public. I mean, and a lot of people don't know where to look. You did. You still do. So.
Well, I just always was fascinated by the dark stuff, all the dark information and all the secret stuff that nobody knows about, all the dark teachings and connections between religions and governments and sciences, and and how the world really works. And
you're not going to, you're not going to find this on your Kindle. Sorry, pal.
No, it ain't going to happen.
Nope,
not going to happen. And I'm fascinated with all of this. And then the more the more I looked, the more I found. And so, and I was doing all of this, like you said, I was doing this way before computers.
Yeah.
I was doing the hard work. I was going there every day to county USC libraries and these 5 or 6 stories underground.
Yeah, and the vast majority of this stuff is still not on computers. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Doesn't matter that computers are around. There still hasn't even accessed this stuff because nobody's ever, shared these sources with a lot of the computerized devices. It's too hard to find still.
That's
I mean,
right.
some of it you can, but for the vast majority of it, forget it.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. That's why I love doing what I do, because I'm fascinated with what I'm seeing. And if you know what you're looking at, and if you really understand the value of what you have found, something which is of incredibly intrinsic value, knowledge that the people of the world do not have, and here it is in a book published in the 1890s, explaining and showing you how this and that works, and explaining it and what the words mean, and then you think, my God, what an incredible find! But it's in an old 1890s book in an old bookstore out in the back, and I'm just amazed how much people don't know. And so
and not only you, but this is what Jack Barringer did too. He went and found these old books like the Atrahasis and the Enuma Elish and all these other reference sources that Sitchin had accessed as well. But Jack Barringer, I mean, he took this stuff and put it into layman's terms. So that instead of, going through, because Sitchin can be pretty wordy. There was another guy that, Christian O'Brien, I know we wanted to touch on him a little bit. He was very scholarly, but this guy, Jack Barringer, wrote an entire series of books called the Past Shock series of books. And he put all of this ancient knowledge into layman's terms. Like, for instance, the Atrahasis it's this Akkadian, it's this Babylonian epic of the Great Flood, right? And this Atrahasis he was the good man, supposedly. I mean, the Atrahasis actually translates into exceedingly wise. And this was the guy who was basically turned out to be Noah. He was warned of the flood and by one of the gods. And he went and basically survived it by building a so-called ark. Mm-hmm. What's interesting is I was reading Manly Hall today, and instead of the Atrahasis, you've got this Navajo version of the flood, and there was somebody named Atsehastin. Atsehastin instead of Atrahasis. The letters are a little different, but and this is basically the same personage in the Navajo religion, and he survived the flood by escaping through a hole in the sky. So what's really interesting, if you want, like a lot of times, if you want to know what our roots are, who we are, what really happened in the ancient past, you got to go to the stories that are most common to humanity. And then you see these parallels. You've got Atrahasis and the Atsehastin, and two different cultures that are, on the other side of the world. And when you start seeing these things that show up, you realize, well, wait a minute. This is something, there's a flood story that's common to all cultures throughout the world. what was going on here, what's happening. And so you got somebody like Jack Barringer who researches this, and he puts it into layman's terms. And we carry all of Jack's books, and this is not like a shameless plug for Jack. Jack passed away last week, and this guy had never had the notoriety or the fame or the recognition of a Sitchin. But this guy, people would buy like 10, 20 copies of Past Shock and just give them away to all their friends because they wanted people to understand in real simple language rather than having to go through hundreds of pages of Sitchin. So I just want to, take my hat off to Jack because this guy opened my mind. I mean, he read every single book, and when he read a book that he liked, he went and found the author every single time. He didn't care where it was. He would go find the author to ask him more questions. I mean, this guy was, 20 years my senior. He just passed away a couple months before his 80th birthday. He never lost his curiosity.
Nope.
He always went out to find out the answers firsthand. And I've got so many stories about this guy. And
he was a dear friend of ours. And he was fascinating to sit over a cup of coffee in a restaurant and sit and listen to him talk about some of the things that he was working on, some of the books he was working on. I'm just amazed at how much people don't know, and that's been my life's passion, is to try and enlighten the world to the really interesting, dark, strange wisdom of this world that people have no idea in the world. They've been robbed of their humanity. They've been robbed of their spirituality. And I know that. I understand what's going on. I want to help people to get back into tune with who they are and find out where all of this stuff has come from and where the religions and governments and ideas and belief systems have originated. For the first time, wake up and find out where all of this stuff has come from. And it gets interesting, boy.
Yeah, and Jack's thing was the ancient gods and why all the stories that we share culturally worldwide had these gods. Well, why is that? And then all of the legends about the gods have their parallels throughout the world. I mean, we're not stupid. We can figure this out, but everybody tells you that it's just a fairy tale. It's just mythology. But, that's what they said about the city of Troy until, Heinrich Schulman went there and found out, and he wasn't even an archaeologist. He said, wait a minute, I'm going to go and find out. I know this is true, and that's what we need to do individually, is say, wait a minute, it doesn't make sense that this would be just a big story. And so you dig into this information and you can realize, well, wait a minute, you can not only dig into the dirt and the archaeological, city of Troy, but you can also dig into books like this and find your reference sources and realize there's a gold mine of information out there. But if you want to sit home and watch, Big Top Pee-wee and, all
the TV shows, then you're never, ever, ever going to be introduced to what you could have known if you had just understood. You could have done wonderful things.
But the Kardashians are on tonight, so I just can't, I'm sorry.
Don't have time right now. So, I know. And, the New York Times issued an apology. I was just caught that, and I thought that was interesting. The New York Times issued an apology to the public about Trump. I don't care about the Trump part, but I think it's really telling. They said of themselves in their apology that because they have printed up the papers that Hillary Clinton has won the presidency.
Like the old Dewey.
That's exactly right. And they put it out on the street. And now it's in the papers. She won. And then when they found out she didn't win, well, in their apology, they said they're sorry. They jumped the gun and printed something which wasn't true. And they thought it was going to be true, but it wasn't. And so they're apologizing to the public and saying that we're really going to make a legitimate try not to deceive people any longer. We're going to try not to deceive and make up stories, but that aren't true, just to sell newspapers. I think that's interesting. The New York Times saying that we're sorry that we lied to you and we were a propaganda machine.
How long have they been in business, and how all of a sudden now they're going to change? Okay, well,
now they're going to change. Why? Because they were found out.
Yeah,
the paper's already been printed. Yeah,
it's like that old story about the scorpion that convinces the frog that he's going to, the frog will get him across the river. Just let me ride on your back. And the frog says, well, you're a scorpion. How can I trust you to, and don't worry. And then the frog brings him over, and the scorpion stings him and says, tough luck. You should have known. That's my nature. Well,
that's right. It's just by nature. I lie all the time,
Yeah.
So I just thought that was very interesting that the New York Times said we were sorry for deceiving the people and then writing something that wasn't true, and we thought it was true. We wanted it to be true, so we put it in the paper. Now we find out that not only was it not true, but in fact we lied, and we're sorry about lying, and we'll try not to do that anymore. I'm saying to myself, well, it's about time the New York Times said we're sorry we lied to you. But my question is, how long have they been lying to us? All the way back to the First World War, Second World War, during the Vietnam, all the crap that's gone on in America and around the world. How long has the New York Times been lying to us?
Yeah, I think there's been a few people. I don't know if it's with the Times. I think there might have been some with the Times as well. So when there were certain reporters that actually did tell the truth that wasn't really supposed to be told, and they got their asses fired.
That's it. You're right. So it's an incredible story. But Neil Freer, very important. Jack Barringer, our dear friend, extraordinarily brilliant guy with some incredibly writings in his books. And the bookstore itself is thebooktree.com in San Diego. Also, what was a couple of other people we wanted to talk about quickly? Who were they? Some of the others we wanted to pay tribute to.
Yeah, there was Christian O'Brien.
Christian O'Brien, right.
We should do like a whole other show about this guy, because this guy was he was contemporary of Sitchin, and he was actually he came across information that Sitchin didn't come across, but it complements Sitchin tremendously. And they had their differences as well, but this guy was over in working for the oil companies. Yeah, he was from England, but originally, but he had been sent to work for the oil companies to, basically scout out oil places to drill oil, and so he had to. He ran across some ziggurats that had been, covered over, and he had to, basically dig down and in
doing his job, he began finding out all kinds of strange things. The name of his book was The Genius of the Few, isn't it?
Yeah, and the subtitle is The Story of Those Who Founded the Garden of Eden.
Right.
And
so I'm hearing the music, so we're going to be taking a break. But I want to say again, give your address and your email, and how we can get to you.
Yeah, it's just call our 800 number, 1-800-700-8733, and email us through the booktree.com. We'll send you a really cool catalog out, and we got to have you back on. Just remember, the booktree.com is sensational stuff, and you got to go and get the stuff. You'll see it yourself. I'm going to have to go. I appreciate it. I appreciate you having me on, and
let's do it again.
Sounds good.
No rules, no taboo topics, no fear of doom, We are American Freedom Radio.